Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Bridge HC Online. I am the lead pastor here, Larry Vinson, and this time of year is a time of transition for a lot of people. When you get into the end of summer and you're starting the new school year, you're transitioning out of that vacation mode and into the busyness of life. For some, you're transitioning out of a really busy season into a less busy season. Churches all around are ramping up for their back to church Sunday services and getting ready to ramp up towards Christmas and leaving the busyness of outreach from the summer. And it's just like a whole transition. Having 6 kids, it feels like all the time we are constantly busy, constantly trying to do stuff, but there does seem this extra sort of busyness when it comes to the fall. And as I was thinking about, okay, what do we want to talk about today? And I started thinking about just the time that we're in right now, the season of life that we are in right now. I started thinking about the season of life that the Bridge HC is in. In about a month, we will be celebrating, month and a half, we'll be celebrating our first anniversary of opening our doors to the public, and I could not be more excited. This is just going to be an awesome opportunity for us to praise God for all the things that He has done thus far in the last year and what He will do continuing forward. That is just an amazing testimony of what God has done, and we can't wait to celebrate it. But right now, as I think about not just what's ahead, but what has happened, what is behind us. Man, let me tell you, this last year has been filled with great moments, but it's also been filled with stress. And while I understand that the future is going to be busy, and there are going to be times of blessing and power from God and things like that, there are also going to be times of stress. But right now, what we find ourselves in is a time of transition. Transition from one chapter to the next. It's exciting, but it's also busy. It's phenomenal, but it's also anxiety. And I wonder if this is how we all feel when we go through transitions. And I started to think, well, how did Jesus handle these moments of transition? How did Jesus handle the stress of the things that had just happened, but then the pressure of the things that are yet to come? And then I realized that Jesus went away all the time to pray alone with his Father for hours on end. And then I started wondering how Jesus practiced that or taught that to his disciples. And I fell upon one place, a place that Jesus took his disciples to numerous times, maybe not in the same exact spot, but a spot nonetheless. The most famous of these is towards the end of Jesus' ministry. As a matter of fact, it is the night of his arrest and day before his crucifixion. It is the upper room. The upper room for Jesus was a place to provide an intimate and personal experience with his disciples, to share, not in ministry, but in fellowship, in love, in teaching. It was a safe atmosphere. It was a place where things could be said without judgment, where correction could be made without condemnation. It was a place where people got to get up close and personal with Jesus and to really hear his heart, not just for the world, but for them. And I started thinking, man, I want that space. Why shouldn't we want that? That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how Jesus meant for us to have these regular upper room moments with him so that we can learn about our faith and about ministry and about whatever it is that he wants to say to us. That's what we're going to talk about today, because I believe that we all need upper room moments. So here's how we're going to talk about it. As always, we're going to cover this in 3 sections. In our first section, we're going to talk about how upper room moments, what they are, and how we need them, the necessity of those moments. And then in our second section, we're going to talk about how crucial honesty is to our upper room, and how we not only have to be honest, but we have to receive honesty. And then finally, in our third section, we're going to talk about how upper rooms remind us of our purpose. And I don't know about you, but I need moments where I am reminded of my purpose. So let's dive right into this by talking about our first section that we're calling Shaped by Love. And I want to take our text from the ultimate upper room moment of John chapter 13. Now, this upper room moment is actually covered in chapters 13 through 15, and if you want to continue it, in chapter 16, but that's more of a walking time between the upper room and the Garden of Gethsemane. So really, the upper room, if we're getting technical, is chapters 13 through 15, but we're only going to talk through chapter 13. And I want to start by reading the first 5 verses as we look at what it means for our upper room to be shaped by love. Here's what John writes. He says, "It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and to go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. And after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him." Now, what do we learn about the upper room through all of this? And what do we learn about our upper room moments? Well, the first thing I see in here is that the upper room was both private and intimate. Jesus wanted to share his last meal with those to whom he was closest. Jesus cared about close relationships. Yeah, he cared about everybody. He loved the world, right? John himself says that in chapter 3. But he spent specific time with his 12 disciples, even more intentional time with 2 or 3. But we know that Jesus cared about every person in that group of 12. And because he cared about them, he wanted to have this time together. He wanted to get into this upper room space, because this space allowed Jesus the opportunity to show his disciples just how much he loved them. You know, I think about this moment a lot. Like in my ministry, if I were to tell you, how many moments do you think about? Like, what are your favorite Jesus moments in the Bible? This ranks up there in my top 5, right? I love this moment because everything inside of me wants a moment like this. A moment where I can look at my Savior face to face, be in his full presence, share a meal with him, and to be loved by him in his fullest. And not to mention, just to feel the vibe of the room around him. If I were just in that moment, in the time that it happened, to see the disciples talking amongst one another, to see John laying beside Jesus and hearing him talk, and seeing Peter have a hissy fit over certain things that Jesus says, and to even see Judas and to feel the tension in his body as he contemplates what he's about to do. I think about this moment, and everything inside of me wants a moment like that. I mean, don't you? Don't you want a moment where you can get alone with God in community and in isolation and just share your heart with God? And to have him share his heart with you? Now, you might be sitting here and thinking, well, Larry, that was thousands of years ago. That can't possibly happen today. It can. We can have upper room moments. But before we can, we need to make a choice. And it boils down to, who are we going to be like? Are we going to be like Jesus? Look, Jesus knew he was going to die that very night. His life was on the line. He was moments away from one of the toughest moments that he had ever gone through. A time where he literally sweat blood. A time where he felt so much pain that they had to create their own word for it. And yet, from John's perspective, the author of the gospel, we see Jesus act in such a loving way that it showed the embodiment of his love to his disciples. But why? Why did Jesus do the things that he did in chapter 13? Why does he wrap a towel around his waist and wash the feet of his followers? Why does he do this? Because Jesus chose love instead of grief. He chose love. He could have been sad about leaving the 12. He could have been sad about dying. He could have been sad about leaving his mom and his family, but no, he chose love instead. He chose love instead of hatred. Let's not forget that he washed the feet of the man who was going to betray him. He washed the feet of Judas. Judas didn't leave to betray Jesus until after the washing of the feet. Jesus could have skipped over him. Jesus could have said, "Get away from me, you who are unclean. You can never be washed." He could have said all of that, but he didn't, because he chose love instead of hatred. Jesus chose love instead of anxiety. He was worried about dying on that cross, about the pain that he was going to go through. Later on, he will beg his Father to let this cup pass from his lips, but only if it be his will. And the only reason Jesus went to that cross was because he chose love instead of anxiety. Jesus could have felt any negative emotion at this time, or any emotion at this time, but instead he chose the best thing. He chose love. Now, it may not have been joyful love. He may not have been smiling through it. It may not have been peaceful love, but it was love. And that love propelled him to do all that he did and all that he said in that room. So are you going to be like Jesus? Are you going to choose love above anything else when you come into that personal and intimate experience with God? Or are you going to be like Judas? Judas, we know this from other texts, was consumed by his grief. Judas was consumed by his hatred. He was consumed by his anxiety. And while love propelled Jesus to serve his followers, Judas's grief, hatred, and anxiety, his fear, propelled him to leave and betray Jesus. So are you going to be like Jesus, who was consumed by love? Or are you going to be like Judas, who was consumed by his fear, his grief, his hatred, his anxiety? Are you going to enter into this upper room moment, this time with God, with all of your fears taking over? or whatever it is that you're battling through. For me, the choice is clear, and I hope it's clear for you too. If we are to have an upper room moment with Jesus, that we need to be consumed and motivated by God's love, just like Jesus was. And we got to learn to put away our grief, to put away our hatred, to put away our anxiety, if only for the time that we spend in that space. Now, I'm not talking about leaving it at the door. Man, I hate when churches say, when you come to our church, you leave that negativity behind you at the door and you come in, you're ready to praise God. No. That's not what God wants us to do. God wants us to bring those things in there with us so that we can give them to Him. We need to take them off, yes, but we need to put them to the side, to give them to God, because God will use this time to deal with those things that we're battling with. That's what it means to be consumed by love, to be motivated by love, and to take away or take off these things that we're battling with. It's not to get rid of them or not to put them outside the door, but it's to bring them to Jesus. So which one are you going to do? Because the upper room was defined for the disciples, is defined for us. It was shaped, it is shaped by the all-consuming love that Jesus had for His disciples and still has for you and me. And we need to know that whenever we step into our upper room, our personal and intimate moments with God, it will also be defined by the same thing. Now look, I got to be honest. We may not feel deserving of that love. I know that a lot of times I don't feel deserving of God's love. We may not feel that we can give the love that we are feeling from God back to God. That's okay. Look, we may feel tired and burned out, and not because of ministry or anything else besides life. Life might be burning us out right now and making us tired and making us wish that we could just sleep for a few days. But let me tell you, God's love can handle our stress. It can handle our burnout. It can handle our tiredness. It can handle whatever junk we bring into the room with us. Because here's what God will do. Jesus will take that junk that we walk in with. He'll unload it from us. He will don that servant's garb. He will grab that pitcher of water, and in the fullness of His love, consumed by His love, motivated by His love, He will wash it off of our feet and make us clean again. Think about that as we head into our first set of discussion questions about to pop up on the screen. If you're with us here for the first time, welcome. These questions will pop up. You're going to go ahead and push pause at that moment, and you're going to take about 10 to 15 minutes to discuss either one or all three of these questions with those in your community and in your group. But if you are by yourself, do not skip over these questions. Take the time to reflect on these questions. Jot down a few notes from these questions and discuss them later with somebody else if that's something that you feel called or led to do. But don't miss this moment. This is the meat of our time together. So spend about 10 to 15 minutes to answer either one or all three of these questions. When you're done, come on back and push play, and then we will start our second section. Hey guys, welcome back. Look, we all need upper room moments. We need those moments that are intimate and personal experiences with God. But we have to understand how we need to enter into that room. Because those upper room moments are shaped by an all-consuming love from God, but also for God. These upper room moments are a place where, if only for a moment, we get to shed off that stress, the burnout, and whatever other negative emotions that we are holding on to in exchange for a chance to feel nothing but God's love for us. A few weeks ago, I was able to attend a workshop conference put on by a church planting organization, and I would have defined this place as an upper room moment. because it offered us moments of intimate and personal experiences with God, and it was shaped by love, but it was also honest. And I love this about this conference. I had time to talk to the director of the organization, and I was looking for some support for the bridge, and he was very honest with me. He said that him and another leader had talked, and they agreed there was work that I as a pastor needed to do, that we as a church needed to do before they could help me. There was a lot of confusion and cloudiness surrounding what we are, who we were, what we're trying to accomplish. And it was hard to hear. And I remember after that conversation, I was going back to my hotel room and I was pretty bummed, I'm not going to lie. But I understood I had a choice to make. I could either sulk and let my despair and depression and my disappointment consume my heart and my mind. I could do that. And just go through the motions for the rest of my time there. Or I can make the most of my time by giving my all and trying to learn clarity through what these people were teaching me. And I'm so glad I did. Because I dedicated myself to that time there, I received a lot of clarity for the bridge. Things that we'll be talking about over the next months and years of our time together. Look, every good upper room moment is shaped by love, but it's also intent on honesty. Let me show you what I mean by looking again at our text. We're going to jump to the end of the chapter this time. John chapter 13, starting in verse 36. Here's what John writes. He says, Simon Peter asked him, Lord, where are you going? Now, this is after Judas had left and Jesus had said numerous times that he was leaving them, okay? So there's some context for you. Simon Peter asked him, Lord, where are you going? Jesus replied, where I am going, you cannot follow now, but you will follow later. Well, Peter asked, Lord, why? Why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. And then Jesus answered, really? Will you really lay down your life for me? Very truly, I tell you, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. Boy, this upper room moment is a tense one, but it's a necessary one. Because the upper room is a place of honest challenges. Jesus challenged his disciples in that room. Make no mistake about it. He challenged their preconceived notions of their mission. He challenged their preconceived notions of their purpose. Jesus challenged their preconceived notions of what the Messiah was going to do. Because these men in this room at that time were ready. They were ready to overtake the Roman government for Israel and were willing to give up their life for the cause. But then he also challenged their next steps. It wasn't for them to do what only he could do. It was up to him to die on a cross. He didn't want them to overthrow the Romans. He didn't even want them to join him on the cross. Because even though they didn't understand it, Jesus had a very large job specifically designed for each of them. So he challenged their commitment. Look, Jesus knew that it wasn't just Judas who was going to betray him. All 12 of them would end up betraying him in their own way. And because Peter is the one who always opens his mouth, he used Peter as the example. I love Peter not because of how great of a leader he is, just because how relatable he is. That boy put his foot in his mouth about as often as I do, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate the growth that he had to do to become the man that God called him to be. And I got to be honest with you. He wasn't that man in this moment. In this moment, he was the guy who put his foot in his mouth. And Jesus looked at him straight in the eye and said, you have some growth to do. You're not ready for what I'm going to go through. You still got some things to do. You got some things to learn. You got some experiences to live through. This is a place of honest challenges. And while Jesus was there to love on these people, he didn't want them to not deal with the things that he needed them to deal with. You know, it's fun that even though Peter put his foot in his mouth, he didn't get in trouble for it. I mean, he got talked back to, right? I mean, Jesus had an answer for what he had to say, but Jesus wanted him to be honest. And I got to respect that, because I believe that as I'm looking at what upper room moments are, they are moments of honesty. And God does expect honesty from us. Peter didn't hold back. Peter told Jesus exactly what he thought. Peter shared his shock. Well, why can't I follow you? I mean, think back to when Jesus washed his feet. We didn't read this part, but if you know the story, you know it well. If not, read it. Peter, when Jesus came to wash Peter's feet, Peter said, no, you're not washing my feet. That's so below you, Jesus. And what does Jesus say? He goes, look, dude, I got to wash your feet or else you can't be a part of me. You know, he was shocked. Peter was shocked. Why would someone of Jesus' stature stoop so low as to wash the feet of his followers? Peter didn't hold back. He shared his shock. He also shared his commitment. All right, fine, he said. If you're not going to wash my feet, wash my entire body. If my feet have to be clean, you might as well just get all of me, because I'm dirty and I need cleansed, right? That's commitment. Overcommitment, but commitment. And just in our text that we read, Peter again shows his commitment to Jesus by saying, I will die for you. Jesus, I will lay down my life for you. Look, like Peter, we cannot hold back when we are in the upper room. These are not kumbaya moments. They're not meant only for tranquility and peace. They're not meant for us to sit silently and to bask in the love of God and to leave with smiles and rainbows. That's not what these are about. They are the opportunities we need to let go and to unleash on God exactly what we are feeling. They are messy, they are guttural, they are angry at times, or overcome with sadness and grief. They are places where we can share our excitement, we can share our love, or even our fear and our anger. It's a place where we can share our faith with God without fear of judgment or condemnation. But let's not forget that this is a two-way street. So if we are going to come to God with our honesty, and he expects us to do so, then we should expect the same from him. Because let me tell you, whether we like it or not, God gives honesty as much as he expects it. In these upper room moments, Jesus will remind us of who he is. He will remind us of his purpose and his place. He will remind us that he is the Messiah, not us. And that challenge, that truth, will challenge our preconceptions and teach us that we can never be him, nor can we be without him. Jesus will also call us in these moments of honesty to continue on, because look, we still have work to do. And I got to be honest with you, I use these upper room moments for this. Every time I've had a large upper room moment, I'm thinking about hanging it all up and just being a normal pew sitter. But every time, Jesus reminds me that there is still work to be done. Now, God may call us to move on to a different ministry, but he will never call us to quit ministry altogether. God may want us to rest, but rest is only meant for a moment. Our upper rooms can never be our full-time residence. Let me say that again. Our upper room moments, these moments of rest, these moments of love, these moments of honesty, these moments of personal and intimate experiences with Jesus are never to be our full-time residence. They're only meant to exist for different moments of time. They're meant to have honest discussions so that we can be spurred on, encouraged to continue on, but also so that we can be corrected and to be convicted of our sin, because that's what Jesus will do. These moments have helped me to understand that I am not as strong as I think I am. And guess what? Neither are you. None of us are as strong as we think we are. And we will always have things to give to Jesus. And as honest as he will be, as much as he will speak into our lives, we have to have open minds and open hearts to receive what Jesus has to say, and then be willing, key word there, to allow him to change us. Think about that as we head into our second set of discussion questions. When you're done, come on back, and we will continue on with our last section. Welcome back, guys. Look, our upper room is filled with moments of honesty. When you get personal and intimate with somebody else, you can't help but to be honest with them. But here's the thing. God will not only be honest with us, but he expects us to be honest with him. We cannot grow into our next step of our faith journey until we come to our upper room moments with the intent on being fully honest with God. Not too long ago, I had a friend call me about their experience that while they didn't use these words, it fit perfectly within this parameter of what an upper room moment was, right? And they were driving home on a trip, and they were just being completely honest with God, yelling at God, that guttural cry about the things that were going on in their life. And they were angry with God, angry at life, angry at themselves. And let me tell you, my friend unleashed on God. And when he got home, well, when he was by himself. He was just sitting outside, watching a storm come in. And God gave him the answer that he needed. Right then and there, God was honest with him in a very unexpected way. But it was exactly what he needed to hear to help him and his family feel. And so he left that space ready to do whatever it was that God asked him to do so that he could move forward with God and his family into the next step of life. Look, our upper rooms are not stagnant places. That needs to be made clear. We are not meant to stay in these upper room moments, nor are we to leave the same person. God uses these spaces. He uses our upper rooms, these times of personal intimacy, to move us forward in our ministry. And that's why we must understand that our upper room is also moving towards ministry. Our last text that we're going to be dealing with today takes us back a few verses in John chapter 13, starting in verse 31. Here's what John writes. He says, Jesus said, "Now, the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will glorify the Son in himself and will glorify him at once. My children, I will be with you only a little longer. you will look for me. And just as I told the Jews, so I tell you now, where I am going, you cannot come. A new command I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. There is still work to be done. And Jesus has entrusted us as his church, as his community, as his brothers and sisters, as his children, to do our part. Jesus knew what was going to happen. We established that. And he knew who would be left to carry his mission forward. And because of that, he wanted to give them hope that what was about to happen was for the glory of God. Jesus wasn't going to abandon them. He wasn't going to leave them. He wasn't going to just cast them aside and go die on a cross. They still had work to do. They had to remember that so that they can move forward. There are times when we get so lost in the tasks of the church that we forget about the work of the church. The upper room exists to remind us of why it is we are doing what we are doing. And can I tell you what we're not doing? We're not doing this. We're not doing the bridge because we need a regular offering. We're not doing the bridge because we need to fill the sanctuary every week. We're not doing the bridge so that we could just feel good about ourselves. We're not doing this for us. We're not doing this for our sustainability. We're not doing this for our survivability. We're doing this for the glory of God. We're doing this so that through bringing people into a relationship with Jesus, we can bring more glory to God through expanding his kingdom into our community. That's why we're doing what we're doing. And on that, we have work to do. So we cannot get lost in the tasks of the church to where we start forgetting about this work. You see, the upper room gives us hope about our future work, but also peace for the work that we've done in the past. If we have been faithful to God, God will be glorified through what we have done and will do for Jesus. And if we are committed to Jesus, and we'll always commit to be with Jesus, Jesus promises us that he will always be with us, even when we don't think he is. This is what Jesus wanted the disciples to know. He wasn't going to abandon them. He wasn't going to leave them. As a matter of fact, in the next few chapters, he will explain to them about the role of the Spirit and the very connection that will cause between Jesus and his followers. Now, I don't know about you. Maybe you're different than me. But there are a lot of times where I need hope. Where I need to remember that Jesus is with me. And that the things that I am doing for him is actually a good thing. And not something that is causing ruin in my friend's life. The upper room exists for that. It aims to help us to come to terms with who we are, what we are doing, and why we are doing it. Really, the upper room helps us to refocus on our why. Jesus made this simple. We are shaped by love from the God of love to be love for other people. Let me say that again. We are shaped by love from the God of love to be love for others. And if we forget that one simple truth, not only would we lose our focus, not only would we lose our mission in this world and possibly our faith, But others, those who have never been with God, those who have never been in a relationship with God, or those who have left a relationship with God, they may never be enticed again to join us in a relationship with Christ. Because as Jesus said, others will know that he is who he says he is when we learn to love one another. Our ministry, whatever it is that we do for God, must be centered on love. And so it comes back full circle, doesn't it? The upper room is a room shaped by and motivated by God's love. And like I said earlier, we may not come in with God, with love, but God will make sure we leave with it. So what do I want you to do? Plain and simple. I want you to discover your upper room. And I have 4 things that you can do practically this week to get an upper room experience. Number 1, you got to find the right spot. I don't think that an upper room should just be a moment of isolation. I don't think that it should be us, going into a closet for a week or a day or 2 or whatever, and just having time between us and God. I don't think that's what these upper room moments are for. Nor do I think that they should just be moments of community. I don't think that these upper room moments should just be us going into a coffee shop and having conversation after conversation about Jesus with people. No, I think it's a mix of the two. I think it's a mix of community and isolation. I think we need to find a space where we can be alone with God during certain times of the day, and then at other times of the day, we can have intentional conversations with people about Jesus. Not in an evangelistic way, but in a learning way, in an exploratory way. My recommendation is to find people with whom you agree, with people with whom you are equal to in faith, and say, let's go challenge each other for a few days. That's my recommendation, but find that spot. For me, it's a monastery. My best upper room moments have happened while I'm staying at a monastery. But where's yours? Maybe it's a coffee shop. Maybe you can find a coffee shop where you can slip on your headphones, listen to a couple worship music songs, and really focus in on the study of God's word. And then there's other times where you take those headphones off and you invite people with whom you are close to come into that space with you and to have pointed conversations about faith. Maybe that's what it is. Learn to find the right spot. Number 2, be consumed by love. In other words, choose to be Jesus instead of Judas. Choose to be consumed and motivated by love instead of your grief, your anxiety, your stress, or whatever negative emotion or thing that you're battling with. Learn to let that go and to give it to God. Number 3, expect honesty. Not only should you be honest with God, and I mean messily honest with God, but you should also listen to his honesty as well. And then finally, leave with purpose. What is God calling you to next? Maybe he's calling you to maintain what you're already doing. Maybe he's telling you to revive something that you gave up on. Or maybe he's telling you to create something brand spanking new. But what is he calling you to next? What is your why? Think about these things as we head into our final set of discussion questions. And when you're done, come on back and I will quickly wrap things up. So far today, we've talked about a few things, but I hope you picked up on the necessity of upper room moments, because we all need them. We all need our own upper rooms, a place that is shaped and consumed by God's love, a place that is filled with moments of honesty, hard honesty at times, both from us and from God. A place that reminds us of our purpose, wrapped up in this idea that we need to love people into a relationship with Christ. Now, I believe honestly that these upper room moments are necessary for our faith and must be regularly scheduled into our calendar. And that's going to be my challenge for you this week. Now, before we get to the specifics of this challenge, let me bring to light this one thing that I want you to focus on. Okay, every week we have this statement that we give you that we want you to focus on, to think about, to talk about, to pray about, to reflect on, to study, whatever. All right, here it is. Every faith journey needs an upper room. Every faith journey needs a place where we can go regularly to meet with God and to hear from Him and to receive a purpose. For me, that's my yearly sermon retreat. Every year, around this time, I leave for a week. I don't preach, I don't teach, I don't do ministry for that week. And I spend that week planning the teachings and the lessons for the church that I'm working with. Now, for you guys, I'm working on those things here over the next month or two, okay? It's my favorite time of year because not only do I get to work on my sermons for the next year, but I also get to hear from God about what He has to say to me, and I get to be honest with God. I get to experience this entire upper room experience with those that I love. It's a great time. And I do this yearly because I need it yearly, not just for the teaching of the church, but for the health of the church and really for the health of my own faith and for the health of my family's faith. So here's my challenge. Book an upper room experience. Put it on the calendar this week. Find a time, find a place, put it on your calendar, and go through the process. Be consumed by love. Come in with a list of things to talk about where you can be honest with God. And wait for Him to give you purpose. I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm looking forward to you coming back next week as we start a new series that we're calling Trinity or True Unity. And it's a look at how Jesus took His 12 disciples, these 12 diverse people, with often conflicting opinions and theologies, and brought them together to form the church. My hope, my goal, is that this will teach us how to do the same. It will teach us how we can be in an environment and atmosphere where people with different theologies and different philosophies can come together and still focus on Jesus. I hope you can join us for that. In the meantime, if there is something burning on your heart that you need to talk to or you need guidance to get through, reach out to us. All of our stuff is right there on the screen. You can reach to us through our socials. You can email us, or you can come on Tuesday night. We would love to have you. We meet each and every Tuesday night at Tri-West Middle School in Lizton, Indiana. We meet at 6:30 p.m., and we would love for you to come and join us. Now, if you're unable to, maybe you live too far away or you're just too shy or whatever it might be, and you can't join us in person, but you wish you could still join us, you can come via Zoom for our online conversation that we hold every Tuesday night in conjunction with our service. We start streaming at 6:50, so you want to jump on then, and then we will have discussion led by one of our leaders in the church. And don't worry, if you don't feel comfortable sharing, you can mute your mic, you can turn off your video, and you can still participate through listening. I hope you guys can make it, okay? And if you do, come and say hi and tell me that you were recommended by one of these videos. I would love to know how this ministry is impacting you. All right, guys, that's all for me. I will see you next week. But until then, as always, peace, love, and soul.